Boasting the world's oldest rail system, the state of UK train travel is one of the most contentious topics in the country, perhaps even more so than whether you put jam or cream first on your scone. But if you're coming to the UK as a tourist, there's no doubt trains are one of the best ways to get around, with over 2,500 stations nationwide. Hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com, and train travel has been my go-to mode of transport in the UK over the past decade. Granted, it's not a flawless system and it can often be very confusing, but it's still a great way for travelers to get around. So in this video, I'm going to be walking you through step-by-step how to navigate the UK train system, from how to find the best deals on tickets, all the way to navigating the stations once you get there. So let's get started with a brief introduction to the UK rail system. First off, let's chat rail providers. When people talk about trains in England, Scotland, and Wales, usually you'll hear the term National Rail. But what's important to note is that National Rail is actually an umbrella term that's used mainly for branding and consistency. In reality, it encompasses 20+ train companies, including ScotRail and Transport for Wales. In Northern Ireland, however, the rail services are run by a different company that operates independently of National Rail, and this company is called TransLink. For the purpose of this video, I am going to be focusing on National Rail specifically, just because that's where I have the most experience. So if you're looking for guidance on how to take the train in Northern Ireland, then be sure to check out the official TransLink website. Now, there are a few broad categories of trains in the UK that would be helpful to understand. Firstly, there are intercity trains, high-speed, long-distance services that connect major cities and regions in the UK in a comfortable and fast manner. These will usually be more expensive as they have more amenities and onboard services. There are also regional trains, which are slower, shorter distance services that connect smaller towns and cities within a specific region. Their routes are typically designed to serve local commuters and travelers making shorter journeys, so these will typically have fewer amenities than intercity trains. Within many cities, you'll also find companies offering local tram and metro services that are run entirely independently of National Rail. This is why in most cases you can actually use your train tickets on local transport services. Lastly, there are several privately owned companies that offer experience and heritage trains that are not part of the National Rail network. These trains are generally more for the purpose of sightseeing or tourism rather than getting from point A to point B. Now, with the basics covered, let's go through step-by-step how to plan a train trip in the UK. Step 1 is simply deciding whether or not train travel in the UK is actually the right fit for your trip. As I mentioned before, while I personally really enjoy train travel in the UK, depending on your specific trip and priorities, there might be better alternatives. Some of the downsides of train travel in the UK include the cost, especially if you're not booking far in advance. In addition to that, the train system here is often known for its delays, cancellations, and strikes, so it might not necessarily be the most reliable option either. If you're looking for alternatives, a budget-friendly option might be looking into coach travel or bus travel, like with Megabus or National Express. Or you can consider booking a rideshare on services like BlaBlaCar. Or sometimes flying is even cheaper if you're going between big cities and you're booking with budget airlines like EasyJet or Ryanair. Of course, if your priority is freedom and potentially getting off the beaten path, renting a car is probably a good idea, especially because the UK is quite compact as a country, so you could drive from Manchester to London in about 4 hours. So that's definitely a great option to look into as well. Overall, if you're torn and you want to compare all your options at a glance, you can hop on an app like Omeo, which shows you all the buses, trains, and flights at the same time, and from there you can kind of gauge your options and see which one fits your trip the best. Alright, when you've decided that you do want to travel by train, then it's time to move on to step 2, which is buying your UK train tickets. Tickets can be purchased online in advance or at the station, either from a machine or in some cases from an actual person. In any case, I would strongly advise booking in advance to minimize stress and also to get the best deal, because as you'll soon see, booking far in advance is kind of the best defense against the very high prices that the UK train system is known for. It's important to note though that some rail providers actually don't have support for mobile tickets quite yet. So if you buy a ticket online in advance, sometimes that will require you going to the station, putting in a bank card just for verification purposes, and then printing out your ticket at the station. If that happens, they'll be very clear about that in your ticket. And if you see that notice, just make sure you get to the train station well in advance to give yourself extra time to actually print out your ticket. Now, when it comes to buying tickets online, booking directly with the National Rail website or through the website of your specific train company will usually give the best deal, just because they're not going to be taking any additional fees. That said, sometimes third parties like Trainline or Omio can be really helpful, especially if you're planning a bigger trip that includes different modes of transport, like a combination of buses and trains, for instance, or if you're going to be traveling to a lot of other countries and you want to keep all your tickets in one place. I'm personally a huge fan of Trainline in the UK, and I usually use them to book all my train tickets just because they're super simple. I can keep my RAILCARD on there. They help me determine when I'm entitled to a refund. They can help me find split tickets. All in all, there's a lot of great features, and because of that, I actually don't mind paying the extra fee, but of course, decide for yourself if that extra fee is worth it. Now, regardless of whether you book direct or through a third party, there are a few different considerations that you need to make when you're buying tickets, so I'm just going to go through them now. The first consideration is whether you have a RAILCARD or no RAILCARD. If you are visiting the UK for a longer time, it might make sense for you to buy a RAILCARD, which is basically a card that you buy for a set fee and you get it for a year, and throughout that entire year you get to save 1/3 off of all your train tickets, including the London Tube if you hook it up to your Oyster card. From my experience, I found there's almost always some kind of discount code floating around, so you can usually get this card for about £20. And honestly, with how pricey trains can be in the UK, often after 1 or 2 trips, you already gain that £20 value back. Now, there are loads of different rail cards that you can buy depending on your age and also based on things like who you're traveling with. So be sure to look into the different options. You never know, and it could save you a lot of money. Now, the next consideration is standard tickets versus rail passes. If you're only booking a few train journeys during your time in the UK, odds are the best option for you is to just buy point-to-point tickets for the different journeys that you're making. If, on the other hand, you plan on taking a lot of trains while you're in the UK, it might really be worth your while to look into a rail pass or some kind of pass that gives you unlimited journeys. For example, if you're traveling in a smaller area, some regions actually offer something called a Ranger or Rover ticket that gives you unlimited travel within a set area and time period. As a tourist, you can also look into buying a BritRail pass. These passes allow you to pay a set rate for a number of travel days on which you can take as many trains as you want. I've used these in the past and found them to be amazing value if you need spontaneity. If you're traveling to other countries in Europe during your trip, then another pass that might be worth looking into is the Eurail Pass, also known as an Interrail Pass when you're a resident of Europe. Used properly, these passes can save you a lot of money, but they're definitely not for everyone, so if you need more details, be sure to check out my detailed Eurail review. Alright, if you decide to buy standard tickets rather than rail passes, then the next consideration is whether you're buying an anytime ticket, an advance ticket, or an off-peak ticket. When you go to buy national rail tickets, these are generally the 3 categories of tickets that will be available to you. Where these tickets differ is their flexibility and therefore also their cost. Anytime tickets offer the most flexibility. With them, you can travel on any train, anytime on the chosen route without restrictions. As such, they are the most expensive, but are ideal for those who need a flexible schedule. Advance tickets are often the most budget-friendly option. True to their name, you must book them in advance, especially because there is a limited number of them, so booking in advance is essential. With advance tickets, you are tied to a specific train and departure time. And I should note that all advance tickets are only sold as singles rather than round trip. Off-peak tickets are slightly more flexible than advance tickets and cheaper than anytime tickets. They restrict you to travel during off-peak, i.e. less busy periods, generally weekends, public holidays, and mid-morning, mid-afternoon, and later evening on weekdays. There are sometimes even super off-peak tickets that are even cheaper. Off-peak tickets are amazing, not just because they're cheaper, but also because during these times, trains tend to be less crowded. So if you're a tourist and you have the luxury of flexibility, I'd really say these are a win-win. All right, now the next consideration in buying tickets is whether you're getting a single or a return, also known as one-way tickets or round-trip tickets. As I mentioned before, advance tickets are only available as singles or one-ways. However, with off-peak tickets and anytime tickets, sometimes it can be cheaper to buy them round-trip. Annoyingly though, whether a return ticket is worth it will depend on your exact journey and train. Just keep in mind that this is something to look into, and be sure to do plenty of research before you commit to the ticket that you're buying. Further adding to the confusion is split tickets. Now, I'm not really sure why this is the case, but in the UK, sometimes it is actually cheaper to buy 2 separate tickets for one journey. This doesn't actually change your journey at all, and you don't have to transfer trains. You're sitting on the same train, you just have 2 separate tickets, and you'll have to show a different one depending on when the inspector comes on board. This can be a very easy way to save some money, especially because apps like Trainline do show you split ticket options, and then you can buy it all at once, the same as you would if you were just buying one ticket. Now, the next consideration is first versus second class, or as it's known in the UK, standard class. Is splurging on first class worth it on UK trains? Honestly, it depends on the train. When it comes to regional or shorter distance trains, the difference between first and standard class is honestly not huge. You do get a bit more legroom, it's probably going to be less crowded as well, but that's kind of it. There's not really a ton of different perks, in contrast to intercity trains where first class often comes with perks like free meals and cushier seats, and in general, it's probably just more worth it if you're going to be on the train for a long time, because then it's more comfortable. So to decide whether or not first class is worth it, you should really look into the specifics of your train and see if first class actually has any bonus amenities. If not, standard class is absolutely fine. The next consideration is reserved versus unreserved seats. In the UK, reserved seats tend to only be mandatory when it comes to longer distance intercity trains. In these cases, the obligation to book a seat will be made really clear in the ticketing process. Sometimes the seats are just assigned automatically, but if you have the luxury of choice, a few considerations to keep in mind include the seat position. For instance, window is more ideal for wistfully staring out at the world, whereas the aisle gives you a bit more legroom. You should also consider the direction of travel. Some seats may be facing backwards, so if that bothers you, plan accordingly. Beware, however, that sometimes trains actually do reverse direction. There's also quiet zones. These are special carriages that are designed to be quiet, which is honestly, I feel like, the way it should be anyway. All right, once you've decided on your seats and you've booked your tickets, it's time to move on to the day of your journey, with step 3, which is my personal favorite, grabbing snacks. On the day of your departure, I really do recommend getting some snacks, some food and drink for the train, because you are 100% allowed on UK trains to bring your own food, and you can even bring your own booze as well if you want to. Now, the reason I think this is super important is because on longer distance trains, often there are some meal and snack options, but for shorter distance and regional trains, often there's no options at all to buy anything on board. So having something on you, even just a bottle of water, can help a lot. Luckily, there's often great options at the train stations themselves, assuming you're catching the train from a more popular hub. In fact, most train stations will have at least one place that offers something called a meal deal, which is a really great budget-friendly to-go meal that a lot of UK chains offer, where you get a main, a drink, and a snack for usually something less than £5. Now, with those snacks in hand, it's time to move on to step 4, which is arriving at the station. Train stations in the UK can vary a lot in terms of size and design. You'll have everything from tiny stops in the countryside with only one platform to massive grand stations with champagne bars, shops, and public pianos. If you've never been to the station that you're traveling to, I would highly recommend getting there well in advance, just because sometimes these stations are quite overwhelming. And in addition to that, keep in mind that the National Rail website actually has floor plans and lists of amenities for most of their stations, so you can look into that in advance for some peace of mind. Now, when you get to the station's main concourse, your number one priority is finding out which platform your train is going to be on. Sometimes these platforms aren't announced until the train arrives. Remember, when you're looking at the board, the destination that's listed is going to be the final destination of the train. So if you don't see your exact destination name, don't panic. Instead, look for the term calling at. Calling at refers to the different stations that they're going to be stopping at along the way. Look for your destination in that list, and hopefully once you find it, you can confirm that that's the right one. Once your platform is announced, it's time to move on to the next step, which is, of course, getting to your platform. Platform numbers will generally be very well marked, so just look up for signs before making your way. At this point, make sure you have your ticket handy. A lot of train stations in the UK have fare gates that you need to scan your ticket at in order to actually access the platform. As for where to scan or insert your ticket, it can often be quite confusing. For physical paper tickets, you should look for slots like this that you can insert your ticket in. For digital tickets, look for a fare gate that has an electronic scanner that looks like it could handle a QR code. Here's a confusing example from London where there's 3 separate areas that you could potentially put your ticket. Now, once you get onto the platform, double check that you're getting on the right train by confirming with a screen either on the side of the train or on the platform itself. And at this point, be sure to look on the board for any special notes. For instance, there are sometimes trains that split, so only a portion of the carriages, or coaches as they call them, go to the destination that you're trying to get to. Sometimes in the case of smaller train stations, there's even platforms that are too short to accommodate the entire train. So you need to sit in a certain part of the train to ensure that you'll be able to get onto the platform once you reach your destination. Now it's time for step 6, which is to find your carriage, or coach, as it's sometimes called. If you have a reserved seat, make sure you're standing in the right part of the platform so that you're in front of your coach when it arrives. Most of the time, there's going to be some kind of carriage plan that tells you exactly which part of the platform you need to stand on, depending on your coach number. When in doubt though, there's usually staff close by, so you can always ask them. If you don't have an assigned seat, then you simply need to find a coach that's in the correct class that you booked for, and then find an empty seat. I find that the farther you walk, the emptier the coaches tend to be. Now, once you find or choose your coach, then it's time to hop on board. If you find that the doors aren't open, what you need to do is look for a button that has this symbol on it. Once you press that, the door should open. Now it's time for step 7, which is finding your seat. If you have larger bags, keep an eye out for luggage racks, which are usually found at the end of the coaches. For smaller bags like backpacks or potentially small carry-on suitcases, usually there's space above the seat for that. If you don't have a reservation before sitting down, double check that A, the seat isn't reserved for your part of the journey, and B, it's not a priority seat if the train is looking full. Train reservations in the UK can either be marked on electronic screens or, in more old school cases, paper slips attached to the seat. In any case, make sure to double check what portion of the journey that the seat is reserved for. Sometimes those red lights seem really ominous, but when you actually look at it, it's only reserved for a small portion of the journey. So as long as that doesn't conflict with your journey, then those seats are fair game. Now, finally, we're on to step 8, which is to get comfortable and enjoy the ride. To get settled, be on the lookout for the following features that are common across most UK trains. First of all, coat hooks, which are usually on the wall next to your seat, but sometimes may need to be pulled out, as well as storage space, which is usually above your seat, and plugs, which are usually on the wall or between seats, onboard toilets, typically found at the end of carriages, and Wi-Fi on certain trains, although quality is usually questionable. As you get comfortable, make sure you have a copy of your RAILCARD, your ticket, and your ID on you, just in case a ticket inspector comes on board. Depending on the route you're taking, they won't always come and check your tickets, but generally for longer distance trains, they will. And after you enjoy your journey, we're on to the final step, which is to disembark. If you're not getting off at the end station, I would recommend preparing for disembarkation about 10 minutes in advance of your arrival time. This should give you enough time to not be stressed out and panicking like a headless chicken once the train arrives. I like to keep an eye on my location on Google Maps, just so I have a rough idea of how far away I am from my destination. This is probably a good time to mention that when you hear the term alight here, what that means is get off here. So if they say alight here for X attraction or alight here for X connection, that means just get off here if that's what you're looking for. Now make sure you memorize the name of the stop that you're getting off at, because most major UK cities actually have multiple train stations, so you don't want to accidentally get off at the wrong one and have a longer commute to your hotel. Now, if the door isn't opening, again, remember you do have to push a button with this symbol on it, so look for that on the wall. And once the doors are open, be very careful when you're getting off the train because there's often a gap. To navigate yourself off the platform and onwards to where you need to go, be on the lookout for signs. The signage in the UK is usually pretty good. If you're transferring onto another train, be on the lookout for signs that tell you the different platform numbers. And if you have less than 10 minutes to make the connection, I would recommend speed walking or maybe running just in case. Now, if this is your final destination, do make sure you also have your ticket ready for scanning, because often the fare gates will need you to scan your ticket again on the way out for you to leave. If the gates are open though, you can just walk right through. And if you're completing your journey to your final destination, like your hotel, do keep in mind that your train ticket is probably only valid for the exact train that you took. So if you need to continue your journey on local public transport, you're probably going to need to buy another ticket. Lastly, take note that in the UK, if your train is delayed by more than 15 minutes, most companies will offer you some form of compensation through a scheme called delay repay. Of course, annoyingly, this does depend on the company, and the process depends on the company itself as well. So if your train is more than 15 minutes delayed, then look up your train company plus delay compensation, and hopefully that'll give you step by step what you need to do to claim compensation. I've made so much money back over the years by claiming my delays. All right, I hope that guide to taking trains in the UK was helpful. As usual, be sure to let me know if you have any more questions, and be sure to like and subscribe for more practical travel videos just like this one. I'll see you guys next week. Bye!